Now, I've been getting many of such questions lately. Why and how are you even comfortable with putting your money into Chinese investments? You're not afraid of the Chinese Communist Party? How can you even trust anything that comes out from China's mouthpiece? Everything there is fake.
He locked the door! Unlock the door now! No. He's taking hostage on me! Unlock the door now! But you lock the door! You lock the car door!
It's on auto lock!
Auto lock!
My car is auto lock!
Is it because I'm Chinese?
Is it because I'm Chinese? Okay, jokes aside, I think I can understand where everyone's concern is coming from. So in this video specifically, I'll just attempt to break down some of the common arguments around why people or why investors are not invested in China, and then provide some of my own opinions and own thoughts just for your own references. Of course, if I missed out anything, feel free to leave in the comment section down below on why you're not comfortable. And of course, remember to gently tap the like button too, in case it runs away. So, the first and most common point that I see thus far is that all Chinese companies are fraud and you can't believe the numbers that they're spitting out on a quarter-on-quarter or year-on-year basis. Okay, let me try to break this down. So I believe many investors have such an impression, probably because of the infamous Luckin Coffee incident, where they essentially cooked their books to defraud investors of capital, while painting the story that they will be the Starbucks of China. So at its peak, it was trading at around $50 back in January of 2020. Currently, it got delisted and still trades over the counter at around $9 give or take. So the stock chart looks exactly like a rug pull. I think to further drive home the point, especially for my Singapore viewers or investors, there have been a multitude of such rug pulls even in the Singapore exchange itself, where there are no shortage of Chinese listed companies raising funds in their attempt to expand their businesses, but all ended up nowhere to be seen. So I'll just put a few screenshots to show you some S-chip companies which are the bomb back in 2010s. So for those of you who think that I'm just young and ignorant because I don't know what happened back in the days, don't worry, I have a dad in his 60s, and when I floated the idea that I wanted to buy into Chinese companies, he was the first one to point out the cornucopia of red flags prevalent with investing and putting your money in China. So to make things worse, especially during the period of 1990s to 2000s, China was exceptionally notorious as a trading country and as a trading partner. So one of those notable occasions was what happened with Suzhou Gongyueyuan, which is the Suzhou Industrial Park collaboration between China and Singapore. So that incident hit me quite hard because it concerns my own home country, and Singapore essentially got played by the local government over there. Go search it up if you're interested to know a little bit more background. Now, begs the question, despite so many shortcomings and a bad track record, why am I still invested in Chinese stocks? So I will answer this in two folds. Number one, like I mentioned umpteenth amount of times, China don't run a monopoly over fraud and scams. If you were to play the listing game, you can always list down a long list of fraudulent Chinese companies. And I, on the other hand, can also find another fraudulent company from other countries to balance off the listing game. So it's essentially a time-wasting exercise. Besides, I would expect that China have more of such instances, especially when the sheer size of the market is much larger than other countries, and I believe that the governance and standards of regulations are subpar at best, compared to their more developed counterparts. Of course, this is not an excuse. I'm just trying to point out the fact and the common observation. Furthermore, especially in the early years of developments and prosperity, there was a wide ranging of structural problems like corruption that are probably still plaguing them today. Heck, even Singapore, being one of the least corrupted countries, still have our fair share of corrupted people in public service. Are we really being fair when we apply these different standards on different countries and just crown China as being the fraudulent country when all we see are just frauds and scams? Or do we choose to believe what we want to believe in? So on the second point, I try to reduce the risk of picking fraudulent companies by picking only the top few and only companies where I can see and test the results in my own personal capacity. So likewise, namely the two dragon heads in China, namely Tencent and Alibaba. Just find anyone living in China, you switch on their phone, I'm 69.69% sure that they have an app downloaded on their phone or by either or both of these companies. Just go ahead and find someone that came from China or have intentions of going back. I rest my case. Besides, I don't even stay in China and I also have both apps. Lol. I do receive DMs from time to time asking me to look into smaller Chinese companies, maybe with the valuations of a few $100 million. So I tend to just tell them to stay away from those smaller penny stocks to essentially save yourself from the hassle and the headache that all these different companies provide. Next, another common point that I realized has come out quite often was really this idea of quote-unquote trusting the Chinese government. So how do you even trust Xi? How do you even trust a party with communists in their name? Do you even know what communism is? Sure, I think these are extremely valid points, especially when 2021 was nothing short of spectacular, having issues ranging from regulatory crackdown on big tech, a new common prosperity agenda where God knows what the CCP wants from all these big tech conglomerates, and rug pulling the ad tech companies. And most importantly, the biggest concern regarding property meltdown. So with this kind of backdrop in mind, who would even dare to touch equities in this sort of environment? There you have it. You are looking at someone who dare. Okay, jokes aside, why do I still have this level of confidence when touching Chinese equities? Likewise, I can split my explanation up into two folds as well. First, let's try to understand the intention behind every action that they have taken thus far. So the crackdown on big tech companies. Why? So the three main concerns that I've distilled so far: data privacy, algorithm controls, and anti-competition. Anything wrong with these three areas? No. In fact, this is a common theme across all the other major economies in the attempt to make the playing fields a lot more leveled and to keep those big tech companies in line and to not really exploit their position and to exploit their dominance. So are these crackdowns draconian? My personal opinion, it's about time that the government look into these industries to ensure for sustainable growth and prosperity as a whole. Next, common prosperity. Is this not supposed to be the ultimate goal of most governments in the world? To help the man on the street lead a better life and to uplift people from poverty? Sure, the devils are in the details, such as the mechanism in terms of wealth transfer and taxation, but the underlying principle is universal. Which government in the world would dare champion the idea of letting the rich get richer and forcing the poor to stay poor? Talking and doing is two different concepts, by the way, but isn't common prosperity the principle for most systems to begin with and to let majority have their voices heard and to improve the prosperity of the majority? Besides, it seems like another buzzword for now, with no concrete guidelines or framework for companies or individuals to abide by. So the consensus online is that it's a quote-unquote donation to the government. So I think when you frame it in this particular way, it leaves a bad aftertaste to many investors. This so-called donation, is it to the party, which mainly comprises of CCP high officials, or is it to the country and its people? So corruption and how the CCP officials benefit can be a topic for another day. Now, for the government to just drive revenue for spending, they can just bump up the tax rates, like how the Singapore government just drive the GST up. But instead, they didn't push for a particular mandate, but allowed companies to have a free rein in how they intend to allocate their capital. And of course, being opportunistic in nature, I believe a lot of all these tech conglomerates will donate in a way where it will generate positive externalities back to its core businesses. Next, to the most sensitive topic on EdTech. I think this was slightly mismanaged by them, but what do I even know? So I empathize with how the system has inevitably driven the culture of the underlying Chinese society today, but you have to pay the price for setting the precedent of destroying private capital in a whim. So I think the common theme that we can observe throughout the variety of actions taken is that they indeed are putting in incredible amount of efforts to build a society that is much more livable and one that others aspire to live in. So at least that's my own baseline assumption. So fundamentally, if you're to ask me if I trust Chairman Xi or the CCP, probably not so much, but I do trust in their aspirations and their ambition. So that's what I trust. I believe that the Chinese civilization have been humiliated for the last 200 years. I believe that the majority of the Chinese people do have an ambitious common goal and is guided by purely human nature to want to realize their potential and to feel superior and not to be humiliated on the world stage. So, since I operate from that perspective, what do you think are the prerequisites that China should have before they make a dent and even have the authority to express their opinion and to express their viewpoint on the world stage? So I can't give you the correct answer because I'm still exploring myself. But it's a good framework to start thinking from. So with that, leave in the comment section down below what have I missed, and I'll see you in the next video, but more importantly, I will see you on the moon. Goodbye!